Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 55 and 5 podcast. I'm your host, Roxy, and in today's episode, we're discussing whether Microsoft should buy Box in the context of its continued investment in Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint. We ask whether Box could bring any additional value to Microsoft Enterprise Cloud offering, and whether an acquisition by Microsoft is realistic or merely speculative. I'm not alone in giving the verdict of a Box, and I'm joined today by my colleague James, who is one of our graduate marketing executives and self-professed Microsoft aficionado. Hi, James.
Hi, Roxy. Thanks. Sure, I'll take that title. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. Also, we're joined on the podcast today by a group of Microsoft MVPs. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Roxy. Hey, James.
Hi, good to have you with us. So before we begin, let's do a quick introduction and let our audiences know who you guys are.
Great. Want me to start or Sharon?
Absolutely, Chris.
Okay. Well, I'm Chris Pyle, and if you're wondering why I have this on, the Hawaiian shirt, so it's Aloha Friday here at Sirius and MessageOps. So I'm just playing the part. But my name's Chris Pyle. I'm the president of MessageOps, which is a Microsoft business unit within Sirius Computer Solutions, which is a $3.7 billion organization, systems integrator with a worldwide presence. And I'm very happy to be here today and have this great conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Good to have you with us, Chris. And Sharon, hi.
Hi, I'm Sharon Sumner, Business Applications MVP. I lead some communities on the Power Platform side of things. We're also, I'm the CEO of Business Cloud Integration, which is a Microsoft Gold partner, and we specialize in the content services side of things. So we're content services charter partner and aligned in that direction.
Marvelous. Thank you both. So first question, have you had any experiences with Box? We're going straight into the Box. Have you had any experiences with Box, or how have you heard of it, and what do you think about it?
Go ahead,
Chris?
Sharon.
Okay.
I want Sharon to go first.
So the only experience I've had of Box is the understanding of it as a migration candidate. Okay, so clients come along to us a lot for migration from SharePoint on-prem or from other products into SharePoint Online, and so Box is one of those things that we've migrated out of.
Yes, I would agree with what Sharon said. I do have a tertiary understanding of Box. I understand what it does. I've downloaded the app and have worked with it for a very, very short period of time as an individual user because my daughter, who's in college, is the one who's using it. But that's really all I've had. And like Sharon, we've been at the enterprise level, have been migrating a lot of people off of Box into SharePoint and Teams, etc. So that's where I'm at, Roxy and James.
It's interesting you say that, Chris, because while I don't have any experience with Box myself, I've just finished university, and that was very much a Microsoft 365 place. So we were encouraged to use Teams and OneDrive and all of those products. One of my friends who went to a different university, they used Box, and when he mentioned that to me, I was kind of like, what? That's a bit unusual. I've not really heard of a university using Box, but yeah, I mean, I guess that leads quite nicely into the next question about your experiences with OneDrive and SharePoint. So could each of you maybe tell us how you use those products, OneDrive and SharePoint? I don't know who wants to go first. You want to start, Chris, maybe?
Yeah, so again, when we talk about usage, we here at Sirius and MessageOps, we're a very large Microsoft, partner, and we do a tremendous amount of systems and services integration, and training, really around the utilization of SharePoint and of course, Teams. And so we're seeing it as a massive uptick in that regard. We're seeing customers when it comes to communication and collaboration, which you need some document sharing. We're seeing a huge uptick in customers trying to consolidate okay, the multiple tools that they used to use into one comprehensive platform. And the way Microsoft, I think it's brilliant the way that they've bundled the solution that says, why are you going to pay for Box or Dropbox or any other, sharing when it comes with the licensure, right, Sharon? I mean, it comes with the licensure, and you can use a lot, utilizing the single sign-on and keep it that way. So we're starting to see more people trying to bring these disparate applications, into more of a unified approach to a communication and collaboration platform. Now, within Sirius, which is, we have 3,000 employees, we just amongst us, Teams is like at the forefront of the way we're communicating and collaborating. And we still use SharePoint huge for our intranet services and such like that, when we're communicating amongst us. But when it really comes down to it, Teams is really starting to take over as far as more than SharePoint, the natural, even though we know SharePoint's the base of all things Teams. But anyway, that's where we're at. Sharon?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, hey, look, my LinkedIn profile is SharePoint Sharon, right? I mean, that. I've been working with SharePoint for, let's just say it's measured in decades, right? So SharePoint is kind of in my blood, and most of the people in my organization come from a place of SharePoint. And I think I was made infamous recently by putting an article out there that literally says, I love SharePoint, because I do, right? What it does is second to none, but it has to be used for the right thing. So SharePoint, as Chris was saying, has become the foundation now. It's gone away from being an individual service to being kind of in that foundation layer of the platform. And so now SharePoint is touched by most of that tooling. And the key there, as Chris said, is the integration piece, the fact that all of this is linked together. And I agree, Teams is becoming the front end of that. OneDrive, still the power engine, right? OneDrive's still one of those key benefits of all your data is in the cloud, except for Cloud PC coming along. That's kind of interesting too. But all of your data is in the cloud, so it doesn't matter if the hardware breaks. Yeah, the organization still has the data. The organization is still in control of the data. And one of those key things there, when we come on to discussing differences between Box, and OneDrive and the whole kind of SharePoint family, is about that data loss prevention and the ability to put all of that protection around the data, especially at the enterprise level, right?
Awesome. You've spoken a lot about the benefits of SharePoint, but you've also mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that you're doing a lot of migrating from Box to SharePoint. So what moves people away from Box to SharePoint? And also, have these people that have migrated said, do you know what, I feel bad for migrating from Box because of X, Y, and Z? Have they given you those reasons? So the one reason why we don't want to leave.
So migration is always for a positive value, right? So Box, my understanding from customers that we work with on the migration side of things, is great at the free level. Exactly what Chris was saying, the university, and again, James, those people that have got the beginner level product, yeah, it does probably more than other products do at that level. But when you start to scale to enterprise, you just expect more. Yeah. So you need to do more, you need to protect more, and you need more features. The thing I like about Box, and kind of going into the topic that we're talking about here, is should Microsoft buy Box? It's a partnership organization, right? So it is deeply synergistic. There you go, I'll get that right. With Microsoft, right? So Box itself, for example, doesn't scale in the way that Microsoft does, and that's often an issue that we hear. But if you want a secondary provider that isn't Microsoft, if you've got that not all of our eggs in one basket mentality on your board, etc., then it can be one of those providers because of the tight integration that it's done with the Microsoft Cloud and using Azure for its global scalability. It can be that kind of, I want to say backup, but it really is not a good backup tool. But you see what I'm saying? It can be that secondary provider if you feel you want to have that in an organization. But largely we see people putting their trust in Microsoft, migrating to Microsoft, because Microsoft have got the wider set. They've got all of the Office tools, they've got Teams, so we've now got, it's not just about files anymore, and it's not even just about security of files. It's about the integration, the conversation, and the collaboration piece entirely for the workplace.
I'm quite curious. I don't suppose either of you have heard of a migration from Microsoft or from SharePoint back to Box. Is that a thing?
I've never done it.
No.
Okay, cool. I thought that might be the answer.
We might need to search the internet for that one occasion that somebody
No,
has migrated back to Box.
I think the interesting thing with Box, when it came out, it was a very much, a product-led growth, right? It was a product-led growth thing, meaning that it really necessarily wasn't IT pushing it down to the organization. It was more of this, grassroots where the individuals were utilizing it to share, and it grew organically, in a product-led growth situation, as Sharon said, with a lot of the free stuff. And but then eventually that doesn't end up scaling in a large enterprise. It gets to a certain point, and then you need to have governance around it. You need to have taxonomy, and it's good, like you said, amongst individuals. But at some point, IT's got to get involved to get its hands wrapped around that. But the one thing I do got to give credit for with Box, and from the usage I've had, and the experience with migrating people off of Box into SharePoint and Teams, the one thing that's always come back is that Box seems to have an easier, smoother integration into a lot of applications. And just speaking with customers, as we're taking them through the change management of moving from Box to SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, that seems to be a reader is, oh God, it was easier with Box. Now, maybe because people know what they use and use what they know. So I'm not necessarily saying it's easier, but they did seem to have a really good seamless integration with a lot of other, third-party applications that, again, I'm not a big Box user, but I've heard this. But then again, when they go back to those people 3 or 4 or 5 months later, they're like, yeah, I got the OneDrive thing down now. Okay, because they've been using it for X amount. So at first there's a little pushback, but over time, like I said, the more you use it, the better it becomes. I don't know, Sharon, do you feel the same way?
I do, and I think you're absolutely right, because I think when you look at Microsoft, what they do is function over form, right? So they solve the problems that businesses are having, and then they make it pretty. And Box was the other way around. So it was really pretty and easy to use, but it didn't have all of the feature set. So I'm a techie, and I think Chris is too. I would rather have function over form, but sometimes end users, and I think Chris is alluding there about all of the extra kind of services that it links into. So it's also kind of big on its Google integration and all of the other platforms, AWS, etc. And so you might be looking at those organizations using Box that are maybe that bit smaller and haven't made the Office 365 investment. But certainly for the stuff that we're seeing on the enterprise scale, you're not looking at organizations with the nice, sexy interface kind of questions. We're looking at organizations that are saying, what's the speed of interaction when I'm in China versus in the States? And that's about the Azure cloud, and that's about scalability and global resilience. And so I think it's maybe naturally targeted to a slightly smaller audience.
That's certainly an argument. Go ahead, James.
No, I didn't have anything to add there. I think it all makes sense, really. I had a look at Box's customers, and they've got a lot of large enterprise customers, just as Microsoft. And I'm not too sure about the Box backend. Do they have their own data centers, or are they piggybacking from like AWS or something? I'm not too sure how that works, to be honest. But yeah, I think the advantage Microsoft certainly has is that they are operating on this global scale, and their Azure coverage I actually think is outdoes AWS, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah.
Another bold claim. 2 bold claims in one podcast. I like that. Cool. So let's go to the next question that we have on our list. Over to you again, James.
Yeah, so I mean, the context of this podcast is that Microsoft has been on a total spending spree recently across all parts of its business. I mean, in terms of consumers, look at Bethesda and ZeniMax with Xbox, and then only a few years ago, LinkedIn for I think it was 16 billion, which was Microsoft's biggest acquisition to date. So I mean, the question is, as a competing enterprise product, it would make sense that Microsoft might be watching Box with a keen eye, which I suppose leads to the question, if you were Microsoft, would you buy Box? And why or why wouldn't you? Who wants to go first? Sharon?
Okay, all right. So, no, I wouldn't. But there's some but there's some really good reasons why not, right? So I think Microsoft has an ethos of working with partners, yeah, and working with connectors to other services. And I think that's a real strength that they are building that, all of their tooling to have that integration story. So to have another service out there that is as well integrated, and it is well integrated, Box, you can integrate it into Teams. It sits in the back of Word, much like OneDrive does, and it's got some really similar feature sets to the storage that you've got within Office 365. I just don't think that they need it in the Microsoft organization. So for me, for Microsoft, it works better as a partner product, an alternate that's also really well linked in, because Microsoft plays nice with other players, than it would work as a purchase. To me, they would literally be purchasing the subscriber base, and these people are probably already integrating with Office 365. I think they've already got them. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I am not going to disagree with what Sharon said. I would not invest in Box either. Again, I believe that Microsoft has done such a great job of, getting, I haven't seen the latest figures, but let's just say 80–90% of Microsoft 365, Office 365 inside the enterprises, whether they're small, medium, or large enterprises, that and you're paying a fee that includes Box features. And so it does to any business owner, why would you be paying 2 times for something? I think eventually people were going to figure out that, look, I need to consolidate and my invoicing, and why would I spend it? I think people start questioning that. So I would not do it. And I think Sharon's point regarding that Microsoft, this whole cloud business is co-opetition, right? I mean, it's all co-opetition. I mean, everybody, look, we compete with Microsoft in some cases. It's just the way it is. But we also partner heavily, and I think Sharon's right. I think, why would you purchase somebody if they're already if they're partnered and they're integrated into a lot of the platforms? So yeah, I don't think Box would be the best investment. And if Satya wanted to ask me that, I would tell him the same thing I'm telling this great group of people who are listening. So yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so Microsoft buying Box is incredibly far-fetched, but also being in Box's box, I would just say, what does Box have to do to become attractive to Microsoft? Can they do anything?
Something different, right? What they're doing is what Microsoft is doing. They need to bring something else to the party rather than just replicating a storage feature.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, sharing files is, it's like pass the salt. It's, yeah, so what? I mean, there's got to be something else out there that they, being Microsoft, does not have today. It's interesting, Box did get a very large investment recently from KKR. It will be interesting to see how they put that money to work. And how they plan on standing out in the sea of sameness as far as storage and file sharing. I agree with Sharon. They got to do something bigger or different or something to get that value up of their product. I mean, they're an awesome company, really smart in how they grew, but I just don't see it as a strategic for Microsoft.
Yeah, I think those are all really valid arguments, to be honest, and I'm generally of the same opinion as well. I'm going to try and throw a curveball out there. So I mentioned the friend that I have at university whose university uses Box and encourages their students to use Box. One thing I know about Box is that it also, as well as integrating with Office and things like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint online, it also integrates with Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Sheets. While I was at university, while a lot of people used the Microsoft offering that we had for free, a lot of people would also use their own Google Docs accounts so when we had, say, a group project or something to work on, they would use what they know, because a lot of schools use Google Docs, and they would set up a Google Doc and share it with the group. And I remember in my own mind, I was thinking, please just use the university's OneDrive, because I don't want to use my Google account. So anyway, but the reality is that I think a lot of students use Google Docs, and Box does that. And when I thought about it, I kind of thought it might make sense for a university if it integrates with Google Docs, and that's what students know how to use. So potentially, and obviously Microsoft does not have this integration, and I don't think it's ever going to come, because it doesn't make sense. If I think that's right, I don't think it makes sense. And especially considering that Google Docs and the functionality is virtually the same across Word as well, Word on the web. Is that a reason why I don't know why Microsoft might want some integration with Box there, or if they could offer Box with Google? I know I'm going off on a tangent here.
I'll throw a small challenge back at you, James. So Microsoft they're not. Okay, it's kind of an old-fashioned opinion to think that they're exclusive in that way. Yeah. So if you look at Power Automate, Power Apps, any of the tools that Microsoft is really putting loads of investment in, there's a Google connector, there's a Gmail connector. We're not ignoring that side of the marketplace. Integration is the key. Okay, maybe we're not going to make it super easy for you to jump off, and save a Google sheet inside of, SharePoint Online and those kind of things. Also not impossible. But what you have to think about is you're talking about two different markets there, right? So universities and university students haven't kind of entered the real world yet of that larger enterprise business where the need is to have governance and consistency at a really different level, right? So you're talking about more consumer integration than you're talking about business integration there for that kind of level of product. I totally get your point, but I don't think in the same way that Microsoft is, LinkedIn, great strategic purchase, by the way, because of the way, I use it all the time on an email. I don't just add somebody as a contact, I look them up on LinkedIn. It's a business tool. Probably doesn't make sense to anybody in university, but it really does make sense for the business world. So I think you have to look at the tooling that's relevant for the right audience, right? So I don't think it's going to be super integrated anytime soon, or I don't think there's going to be a nice Microsoft button that says jump off to Gmail here.
Yes.
No,
but it's not ignored. It's not. The connectors are there because Microsoft live in the real world and they know that people want to use different tools, right?
Yeah, I 100% hear that. Just kind of throwing a curveball there. I guess really that it wouldn't make sense anyway for Microsoft to buy Box just for the purpose of integrating with Google Docs. Like, that's obviously not an efficient.
You could try it, James, and let us know what Microsoft say, what your success is in that conversation. But if we move over to other investments, because we've spoken about quite a lot of money today, and I know Microsoft have invested quite a bit themselves in their own tools. James, what do you know about those investments?
Investments in other tools. So I mean,
in their tools, yeah.
So obviously we've just come off the announcement of things like Windows 11. That's a big deal. Also Cloud PC, I know you mentioned briefly, Sharon. So there has been a lot of investment throughout the last 16 months in things that we didn't really think would see investment, like Windows. I think that was quite stagnant for a long time, and now here we are with a brand new version. So yeah, I guess the question really is, have you seen any significant investment in SharePoint and OneDrive over the last 16 months? And what would you say have been the biggest changes, if there has been investment? And if not, what would you like to see in OneDrive and SharePoint? Who's going first? Chris.
You know, I think that the changes there's so many changes going on within, SharePoint and OneDrive. And I think it's the deeper integration into the platform. I mean, if you look at Microsoft 365, Office 365, it's almost becoming like the operating system. And it's almost like it is an operating. I mean, it's like everything rides on top of it. And then Teams, more than that, right, is as Sharon was mentioning, right, that is like everything's coming off of the basis of Teams. And, whether it's, through the different flow or the Power Apps, all the different, Power Automates and other stuff. So it's to me, the modern SharePoint versus the classic, it's a real nice look. It's easier to create elegant, beautiful, pieces of, SharePoint intranets and stuff for the user. It's easier. The rise of the citizen developer, with Power Apps and getting things. I can't really point out that, hey, they did this and it was awesome. It really blew. It's their whole methodology of how this whole thought of, it's not really about the technology, right? It's really about the transformation that businesses are going through, and how I feel that Microsoft is making it easier for the businesses to actually work within the product sphere. I know there's a lot of technical, different changes and such. I would also say they're making huge strides, as Sharon mentioned also before, around security. And, the DLP, how important is it around data loss prevention within these organizations with so many different avenues to share and collaborate on pieces? How are we making sure that, everything, is locked down and we approach everything with zero trust? So I'm sure Sharon, because she is Sharon SharePoint, okay? And I noticed I've been following her for a long time. So she could probably give you some real in-depth. For me up here, I don't think it's any one big thing. It's just this evolution that every day it's just getting better. So I'll turn it over to the real knowledge person here. That's Sharon.
Okay, so thank you. So the biggest investment, I guess, in the last couple of years is around content services, right? So we've gone through an evolution that you maybe aren't that aware of from the front end. So when you look at things like Project Cortex, which has delivered out Microsoft Viva, now getting really hot in the marketplace, looking at integration of learnings and insights and the connections side of things, but under the hood, the syntax side of things too. So, and again, that supports keeping Box outside, because syntax is about the finding the needle in a haystack inside a super large organization. So it's the ability to use AI to actually categorize and sort that content for you, but not just in the Office 365 tenant. It's the connectors then out to the likes of Box and other systems and SAP and all of those things that organizations use that have to sit outside of Office 365, but bringing that data into search results inside the Office 365 experience. So really the investment in SharePoint, other than the modern workspace and the look and feel, which is, just coming on leaps and bounds and continually developing, is really this kind of AI curation metadata story that's going on under the hood. If you look at anything that Chris McNulty's been doing over the last kind of 18 months, or Naomi Moneypenny, around the content services and the syntax area, the stuff that's kind of yet to be mainstream, still kind of early life in the marketplace, is going to really take over and start to make SharePoint and the Office 365 platform more of an AI-led, knowledge-based kind of platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
I told you,
summing that
didn't
up.
I tell you? I told you.
No, you did,
I
Chris. You
Project
did.
Cortex. I mean, I told you. I told you.
Okay, so this kind of brings us to the end of our podcast, but we do have one more question. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of spoiler alert. I mean, is it a spoiler? It's not. You've basically given your verdict, but I'm still going to ask: to box or not to box for Microsoft, Sharon?
That would be a no.
Chris?
Keep them as
Not
a
to
competitor.
box.
Let them work with your audience. There's benefit there for it being outside.
James?
Not to box. Not to box.
Not to box. James?
No, I would be not to box as well. Yep. Which I'm
Okay.
surprised about because I thought we'd have maybe one yes at least to box.
I
But I
will
guess we're
remain
not
neutral.
boxing.
We're not boxing. So we're not boxing today. Let's talk about box in a year. Let's see how they use that investment money, if they do anything with it, and maybe we can do a part 2 of to box or not to box next year.
Sounds great.
But thank you so much for joining us, Sharon and Chris, and also James. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hope to have you with us again.
Thanks for having
Aloha.
Great
Aloha.
chat.
Great to chat. And for everybody listening or watching us today, see you in the next one.